One morning I was alive, completely alive. I was drinking coffee and watching the news, and suddenly, on TV, I saw my own name. Eve Martinez, 45, died last night in a highway accident. My heart stopped. This is wrong. I'm alive. I'm here. But when I called my family, they didn't answer. When I went to the hospital, they said no file existed under my name. When I went to the bank, my account was frozen. And when I went home, someone else was living there. And then I found out the funeral director I'd worked for 2 months ago had faked my death, stolen my documents, stolen my identity, and I was watching my own funeral on television. Part 1 of 3. Listen, baby. Come sit down and don't move. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to make you question everything you think. You know about trust, about safety, about the systems that are supposed to protect us. This is a story about the most complete identity theft imaginable. The kind where you don't just lose your credit cards or your social security number. You lose your entire existence, your life, your name, your proof that you ever existed. And I need you to stay with me till the very end, honey, because this story will haunt you. My name is Eve Martinez, or at least, it used to be. I'm 45 years old, and 8 months ago I died. Except I didn't. I'm sitting here right now talking to you, completely alive. But according to every official record, every document, every system, I'm dead. Died in a car accident on March 15th at 11:47 p.m. Had a funeral, got buried, have a death certificate and everything. The only problem? I was at home watching TV when I supposedly died. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. 10 months ago, my mother passed away. Cancer. Stage 4. She'd fought for 2 years but finally lost the battle. I was her only child. My father had died when I was young, so planning her funeral fell entirely to me. I was grieving, exhausted, overwhelmed. And that's when I met Richard Castellano. Richard owned Eternal Rest Funeral Home, a small, family-run business that had been in the community for 30 years. He had excellent reviews online, seemed professional, compassionate, understanding. I know how difficult this time is, he said during our first meeting. Let me handle everything. You just focus on grieving and remembering your mother. He was kind, baby. Really kind. Asked thoughtful questions about my mother. Made suggestions that seemed genuinely helpful. And he was efficient. Handled all the paperwork. Filed the death certificate. Arranged everything with the cemetery. Made a horrible process as painless as possible. But here's what I didn't know at the time. While Richard was planning my mother's funeral, he was also copying my documents. My driver's license, which I'd shown him for identification. My social security card, which I'd provided for the death certificate paperwork. My mother's will and estate documents, which listed me as the sole beneficiary. Bank account information which I'd given him for payment. Every piece of identifying information he needed to become me. And I handed it all to him willingly. Because I trusted him. Because he was a professional. Because what kind of monster would exploit a grieving daughter? My mother's funeral was beautiful. Richard handled everything perfectly. Afterwards, I thanked him profusely. Paid the final invoice. $15,000 for everything, and thought I'd never see him again. I went back to my life. My job as a medical transcriptionist. My small apartment. My quiet, solitary existence. I'd taken 2 weeks off work to deal with everything. Spent that time sorting through my mother's belongings. closing her accounts, settling her estate. It wasn't much, about $50,000 in savings and her small house, which I planned to sell. But it was something. 2 months after my mother's funeral, strange things started happening. Small things at first. My credit card was declined at the grocery store. That's odd, I thought. I'd just paid the bill. I called the credit card company. I'm sorry, Miss Martinez, but this account has been flagged for suspicious activity and temporarily frozen. What kind of activity? Large purchases in another state. Did you recently travel to Nevada? No, I haven't left town in months. Then, someone may have stolen your card information. We'll send you a new card and investigate. Then my bank called. Miss Martinez, we're calling about some unusual withdrawals from your savings account. What withdrawals? I haven't withdrawn anything. There have been 3 wire transfers totaling $35,000 over the past week. My blood ran cold. That's not me. I didn't authorize those. We'll freeze the account immediately and start an investigation. You'll need to come in and file a report. I went to the bank that afternoon. Sat down with the manager who pulled up my account. Here are the transactions, she said, showing me the screen. 3 wire transfers. $10,000. $15,000. $10,000. All sent to accounts I'd never heard of. All authorized with my online banking login. How is this possible? I have 2-factor authentication. Someone had access to your phone or email to bypass that, but I have my phone right here. It's never been stolen. She looked uncomfortable. Miss Martinez, I have to ask. Is it possible someone close to you did this? Someone who knows your passwords? I live alone. No one has my passwords. Then we're looking at a sophisticated identity theft situation. I'm going to start the fraud investigation process, but I have to warn you, these cases can take months to resolve. In the meantime, your accounts will remain frozen. I left the bank in a daze. $35,000 stolen. My credit cards compromised. My accounts frozen. How was I supposed to live? I had maybe $200 in cash. That was it. Things got worse. I got a notice from my landlord. You're 3 months behind on rent. Pay or face eviction. That's impossible. My rent is on auto pay. Well, the payments stopped 3 months ago. I checked my bank app, except I couldn't access it anymore. Account frozen. I called my bank again. The auto pay was canceled 2 months ago through your online banking portal. I didn't cancel it. Someone with your login credentials did. Then I got a call from my employer. Eve, why haven't you been showing up to work? What? I've been here every day. No, you haven't. We've gotten emails from you saying you're dealing with a family emergency and need extended leave. Unpaid leave. I never sent those emails. They came from your work email address. Someone was impersonating me, not just stealing my money, but actively dismantling my life. I went to the police. Filed a report about the identity theft. The officer taking my statement looked sympathetic but not particularly concerned. Ma'am, identity theft is unfortunately very common. You'll need to file reports with all 3 credit bureaus, your bank, and any companies where you have accounts. But someone is actively using my identity right now, sending emails as me, accessing my accounts. We'll investigate, but these cases take time, months, sometimes years. In the meantime, freeze your credit and monitor your accounts. My accounts are already frozen because of the theft. He shrugged. Then there's not much more you can do except wait for the investigation. I went home that night feeling completely helpless. Someone was destroying my life piece by piece, and no one seemed to care. Then came the morning that changed everything. I woke up, made coffee, turned on the local news while I tried to figure out what to do. And there, scrolling across the bottom of the screen, local woman Eve Martinez, 45, killed in late-night car accident on Highway 17. I dropped my coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but I barely noticed. That was my name, my age. The news anchor was talking. Martinez, a medical transcriptionist, was pronounced dead at the scene after her vehicle left the roadway and struck a tree around 11:47 p.m. last night. Police say speed may have been a factor. She is survived by no immediate family. Funeral arrangements are being handled by Eternal Rest Funeral Home. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. This was impossible. I was alive. I was right here. But according to the news, I was dead. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. Called my best friend Sandra. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. Sandra, it's Eve. Something crazy is happening. Call me back immediately. I tried 3 more times. No answer. I called my cousin Maria, the only family I had left. She answered. Hello? Maria, it's Eve. She hung up. I called back. Maria, don't hang up. She hung up again. The 3rd time I called, she answered and immediately started crying. Who is this? This isn't funny. My cousin is dead. Stop calling me. Maria, it's really me. I'm not dead. I'm alive. I don't know what's happening, but... She hung up and blocked my number. I turned on my laptop, searched my own name. And there they were, dozens of articles. Eve Martinez dies in highway accident. Medical transcriptionist killed in late-night crash. All posted within the last 6 hours. All saying I was dead. I found my own obituary online. Eve Martinez, 45, of Portland, passed away unexpectedly on March 15th in a tragic car accident. Born in Portland to Miguel and Rosa Martinez, Eve worked as a medical transcriptionist and lived a quiet life devoted to her work. She was preceded in death by both parents and is survived by no immediate family. A memorial service will be held at Eternal Rest Funeral Home on March 18th at 2 p.m. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to the American Cancer Society in her memory. Eternal Rest Funeral Home. Richard Castellano's funeral home. The same place that had handled my mother's funeral. And suddenly, everything clicked. Richard had all my information. My social security number. My driver's license, my bank accounts. He'd been stealing from me for months, and now he'd staged my death. Faked an accident, filed a fraudulent death certificate. Why? So he could steal everything. My mother's estate, which hadn't been fully settled yet. My bank accounts, what was left of them. My identity, complete and total. With me dead, there was no one to dispute anything, no one to question the estate settlement, no one to reclaim the stolen money. He could take everything and disappear. I had to prove I was alive, had to expose what he'd done. But how do you prove you're alive when every official record says you're dead? I drove to the hospital first. I need to speak to someone about a death certificate that was filed in my name. The clerk looked confused. Your name? Eve Martinez. She typed into her computer. Her face went pale. Ma'am, According to our records, you were brought in deceased 2 nights ago after a traffic accident. That's impossible. I'm standing right here. I can see that. But our records show. She turned the monitor toward me. There was a medical file with my name, my birth date, my social security number. Admitted, March 15, 11:47 p.m. Status, DOA. Cause of death, blunt force trauma from motor vehicle accident. Body released to Eternal Rest Funeral Home for burial arrangements. That's not me. I was at home that night. Ma'am, I don't know what to tell you. These records are official. They came from the medical examiner's office. I drove to the medical examiner's office. I need to speak to someone about a fraudulent death certificate. The woman at the desk looked skeptical. Fraudulent? Someone filed a death certificate in my name. But I'm not dead. I'm right here. What's the name? Eve Martinez. She searched her computer. We have a death certificate for Eve Martinez filed on March 16th. Cause of death, traffic accident. It's been officially recorded with the state. Can I see the paperwork? She pulled up the file. And there it was. My name. My birth date. My social security number. But the signature on the death certificate wasn't mine. It was Richard Castellano's. As the funeral director handling my remains. This is fraud, I said. That's not me. I didn't die. Ma'am, if you believe there's an error, you'll need to petition the court to have the death certificate overturned. That requires a lawyer and can take months. I don't have months. Someone is actively stealing my identity. I understand you're upset, but there's a legal process. The legal process is how this happened in the first place. I went to the police station, demanded to speak to a detective. Finally got one. Detective Sarah Chen. Let me get this straight, she said after I explained everything. You're claiming someone faked your death? Yes. Richard Castellano, the funeral director. He had all my personal information from when I hired him for my mother's funeral. He's been stealing from me for months, and now he's faked my death to cover his tracks. That's a very serious accusation. I have proof. The death certificate is fraudulent. I'm alive. I'm sitting right here. She looked at me carefully. Ms. Martinez, I can see you're alive. But are you sure this isn't a clerical error? A mix-up with similar names? It's my exact name, birth date, and social security number. How is that a clerical error? Sometimes these things happen. No, someone deliberately filed a false death certificate. Someone is using my identity. And that someone is Richard Castellano. Detective Chen finally agreed to investigate. I'll look into it. But if your death certificate has been officially filed and recorded, overturning it is going to require legal action. You need a lawyer. I can't afford a lawyer. All my money has been stolen. There are legal aid services. This is insane. I'm the victim here. I left the police station and went straight to Eternal Rest Funeral Home. The sign out front announced, Memorial Service for Eve Martinez, today at 2 p.m. My own funeral was happening in 3 hours. I walked inside. The receptionist looked up. Her face went white. Oh my God. I need to speak to Richard Castellano, now. He's preparing for a service. My service? My fake service. Get him out here now. Richard emerged from the back room. When he saw me, he froze. Just for a second. Then composed himself. Eve. This is unexpected. You faked my death. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. You filed a fraudulent death certificate. You've been stealing from me for months. And now you're about to bury an empty coffin and steal everything I have left." He smiled. Actually smiled. "That's a very creative story, Eve. Or should I say, whoever you are. Because the real Eve Martinez died 2 days ago in a tragic accident. I am Eve Martinez. No, you're someone who's clearly having a mental health crisis. Delusional, perhaps, thinking you're someone who died. I've seen this before. Grief can make people believe strange things." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling the police. We have a disturbed woman on the premises." I ran, got in my car and drove away before the police arrived, because I realized something terrible. I had no proof. My ID matched a dead woman's name. My accounts were frozen. My death certificate was official. To everyone else, I was either an imposter or delusional, and Richard knew it. I sat in my car in a parking lot, trying not to fall apart. My funeral was happening in 2 hours, and I couldn't stop it. Couldn't prove I was alive. Couldn't access my money, my accounts, my life. I was a ghost in my own existence. I called the only lawyer I could think of, the one who'd handled my mother's estate, David Brennan. "Mr. Brennan, this is Eve Martinez." "Who?" "Eve Martinez. You handled my mother Rosa's estate 2 months ago." "I'm sorry, but I don't have a client by that name." "Yes, you do. We met multiple times. You helped me with—" "Ma'am, I think you have the wrong lawyer." He hung up. I drove to his office anyway, walked in, and demanded to see him. The receptionist tried to stop me, but I pushed past. Found David in his office. "Mr. Brennan, please. I need your help." He looked genuinely confused. "Do I know you?" "Yes. I'm Eve Martinez. You handled my mother's estate." He pulled up his files. "I have no record of working with anyone named Eve Martinez or Rosa Martinez." "That's impossible. I was here. I paid you." He showed me his computer screen. The case file for Rosa Martinez's estate was there. But the client name listed wasn't me. It was someone named Maria Castellano. "Who is Maria Castellano?" I asked. According to my records, she was Rosa Martinez's daughter and sole beneficiary. "No, I'm Rosa's daughter. My name is, or was, Eve Martinez." David pressed a button on his desk. "Security, I think you need to leave. Please. Someone has stolen my identity, changed all my records. I just need—" 2 security guards escorted me out. I sat on the sidewalk outside the law office and cried. Maria Castellano. Richard's last name. He'd created a fake identity to claim my mother's estate. Had I met someone? Signed something? Let someone impersonate me? Or had he forged everything after declaring me dead? I needed proof that I was alive. Real, undeniable proof. I drove to my apartment. Except when I got there, the locks had been changed. I knocked on the door. A woman answered. Mid-20s. Looked confused. "Can I help you?" "This is my apartment. I live here." "No, you don't. I moved in 2 weeks ago." "That's impossible. I've lived here for 6 years." "Lady, I don't know what you're talking about, but you need to leave or I'm calling the police." She closed the door. I went to the building manager's office. "There's been a mistake. Someone is living in my apartment." The manager, Tom, looked at me sympathetically. "You're Eve Martinez?" "Yes. I'm very sorry for your loss." My blood ran cold. "What?" "Your death." I saw it in the news, very tragic. I already rented the apartment out. Estate laws say once someone dies, their lease is terminated, and I'm not dead. He stepped back. Ma'am, I saw your obituary. Your death certificate was filed with the building management. Your belongings were claimed by your next of kin, and the apartment was emptied. Next of kin? I don't have any next of kin. Maria Castellano. She provided documentation proving she was your cousin and legal representative. Maria Castellano again. Richard had created an entire fake person to steal everything from me. Where are my belongings? They were removed by Miss Castellano last week. Do you have an address for her? I can't give out that information. Please, someone is impersonating me, stealing my life. Tom looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, I don't know what's going on, but according to all official records, Eve Martinez is dead. If you're claiming to be her, you need to prove it. Legally. Through the courts. I had nothing. No home. No money. No proof of who I was. My ID matched a dead person. My accounts were frozen. My life had been completely erased. I drove to the funeral home, parked across the street, and watched. At 2 p.m., people started arriving. For my funeral, I recognized some of them. Co-workers, acquaintances, neighbors, people who knew me, people who should recognize me. I got out of my car and approached the entrance. A co-worker, Janet, was walking in. Janet, I called out. She turned, saw me, and screamed, "Oh my God! Oh my God!" Other people turned, stared at me in horror. It's okay, I said. I'm alive. I'm not dead. This is all a mistake. Someone pulled out a phone and called 911. There's a woman at the funeral home pretending to be the deceased. She's disturbed. Send help. I tried to explain. I am Eve Martinez. I'm not dead. This is fraud. But people backed away from me like I was a ghost. Or crazy. Or both. Security guards came out. Ma'am, you need to leave. This is my funeral. That's my coffin. I'm not dead. They grabbed my arms, started physically removing me from the property. You don't understand. Richard Castellano faked my death. He's stealing my identity. And then I saw him, Richard, standing in the doorway of the funeral home, watching me get dragged away. And he smiled, that same cold, calculating smile. He'd won. The security guards released me at the property line. If you come back, we'll have you arrested for trespassing and disturbing the peace. I got in my car and watched from a distance as my funeral continued. Watched people file in to mourn me. Watched them leave afterward, some crying, some somber. Watched them talk about what a tragedy it was, how young I was, how sad to die alone with no family. And then I watched them load a coffin into a hearse. My coffin, except I was sitting right there, alive, watching it happen. What was in that coffin? Nothing? Weights to make it feel real? Or something worse? I followed the hearse to the cemetery, watched from a distance as they buried me. A small group of people standing around as a priest said words I couldn't hear. Watched them lower the coffin into the ground. Watched them cover it with dirt. And that's when it really hit me. I was dead. Officially, legally, completely dead. And there was nothing I could do about it. I spent that night in my car. Had nowhere else to go. No money for a hotel. No friends who'd believe me. No family to turn to. I was completely alone. The next morning, I tried one more thing. I went to Social Security office. I need to report that someone has fraudulently filed a death certificate in my name. The woman at the counter looked skeptical. Your name? Eve Martinez. She typed into her computer. According to our records, you died on March 15th. I know that's what it says, but it's wrong. I'm alive. If you believe there's an error, you'll need to provide documentation. Birth certificate, valid ID, proof of my ID says I'm Eve Martinez. She looked at the ID, then at her computer screen. Ma'am, this ID belongs to a deceased person. Using a deceased person's ID is illegal. It's my ID. I'm Eve Martinez. I'm not dead. Security was called. I was escorted out. Again. I was running out of options. Decided to try something different. I went to a journalist. Local investigative reporter named Thomas Rivera. He'd written stories about fraud and corruption before. Maybe he'd listen. I walked into the newspaper office and asked to see him. What's this regarding? The receptionist asked. I have a story about identity theft and fraud, and a funeral director who's stealing from dead people's families. She made a call. Thomas came out a few minutes later, mid-40s. Skeptical expression. You have a story? Can we talk privately? In his office, I told him everything. About Richard, the identity theft, the faked death, the stolen estate. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. That's quite a story. It's true. Every word. Can you prove it? That's the problem. He's erased all my proof. But you're an investigative journalist. You can dig into this. Check his background. See if he's done this before. Thomas was quiet for a moment. What's your name? Eve Martinez. He turned to his computer. Typed. Eve Martinez died 4 days ago in a car accident. I know. That's what I'm telling you. He faked my death. Or you're someone pretending to be a dead woman for what reason exactly? I'm not pretending. I am Eve Martinez. Do you have? I showed him my driver's license. He looked at it carefully. This is expired. What? He showed me. The expiration date had been altered. Photoshopped to look like it expired 2 years ago. When did that happen? I don't know, but carrying an expired ID of a deceased person is suspicious. I realized what had happened. Richard must have gotten access to my actual license somehow, altered it digitally, made it look illegitimate. Just one more way to erase my identity. Please, I begged Thomas. Just look into Richard Castellano. Check if there are other complaints, other suspicious deaths. Something. He sighed. I'll look into it, but I'm not promising anything. This sounds far-fetched. It's real. I swear it's real. Where can I reach you? I hesitated. I don't have a phone number anymore. My phone service was disconnected. Can I give you an email? Sure. I gave him an old email address I rarely used but could still access from library computers. I left feeling a tiny bit of hope. Maybe Thomas would find something. Maybe there was still a chance to prove the truth. I spent the next week surviving day by day. Slept in my car, used library computers to try to research Richard Castellano. Found nothing suspicious online. His funeral home had great reviews, no complaints filed, no lawsuits. He looked completely legitimate. I started watching the funeral home, sitting in my car across the street, documenting everyone who came and went, looking for patterns, evidence, anything. On day 3 of surveillance, I saw something interesting. A woman arrived, mid-30s, well-dressed. She went inside, stayed for 20 minutes. When she left, she was carrying a box of documents. I followed her to a bank, watched her go inside, came out 30 minutes later without the box. I needed to know who she was. Waited until she got in her car, approached her window, knocked. She looked startled, rolled down the window partway. "Can I help you? This might sound strange, but I saw you leaving Eternal Rest Funeral Home. I'm investigating the owner, Richard Castellano. Have you had any problems with him?" Her expression changed, became guarded. "Who are you?" "Someone he stole from. I think he might be doing this to multiple people." She stared at me for a long moment, then said, "My father died 3 months ago. Richard handled the funeral, and afterwards, I discovered that $80,000 from my father's estate had been transferred out of his accounts, into accounts I couldn't trace." My heart rate increased. "Did you report it?" "Of course. But the money trail went cold, and technically, the transfers were made before my father died. I couldn't prove Richard had anything to do with it." "But you suspect him?" "I know it was him. He had access to all my father's information. But I can't prove it. How many others do you think there are?" She looked away. "I found 3 other families who hired him. All reported similar thefts. All around the same time their loved ones died. We need to stop him." "How?" "He's covered his tracks perfectly. Her name was Diana Wu. We exchanged information. She gave me the names of 2 other families who'd been victimized. I added their stories to everything I was documenting. Thomas Rivera called my email account a week later. Left a message asking me to meet him. We met at a coffee shop. He slid a folder across the table. "You were right." My breath caught. "About what?" "Richard Castellano. He's been doing this for years. I found 6 other families who reported financial irregularities after using his services. None of them could prove anything. But the pattern is there." "What kind of pattern?" "Elderly people with no close family, or people who die unexpectedly. He handles the funeral, and shortly after, money disappears from their estates. Sometimes it's subtle, a few thousand here and there. Sometimes it's everything." "What about death certificates? Has he faked others?" "I couldn't find evidence of that. You might be the first, or the first who survived to tell about it. So what do we do?" "I write the story. Expose what he's doing. Put pressure on law enforcement to investigate properly." "When?" My editor approved it for Sunday's paper. Front page. Relief flooded through me. "Thank you. But Eve, or whoever you really are, you need to get legal help. Get that death certificate overturned. Reclaim your identity. The story will help, but you need to fight this legally too." The article ran that Sunday. Local funeral director accused of systemic fraud. It detailed everything. Richard's pattern of theft, the suspicious financial activity, the families who'd been victimized. And it mentioned me. Most disturbing is the case of Eve Martinez, who claims the funeral director faked her death to steal her identity and her recently deceased mother's estate. While authorities have been skeptical of her claims, financial records suggest significant irregularities surrounding her case. The article went viral. Local news picked it up, then national news. Is a funeral director stealing from the dead? Woman claims she was buried alive, legally. Suddenly, everyone was talking about it. Richard tried damage control. Released a statement denying everything. These allegations are baseless and hurtful. I've served this community with integrity for 30 years. I'm the victim of a coordinated attack by disgruntled individuals. But more families came forward. 8, 10, 15, all with similar stories of theft and financial irregularities. The police were forced to open a real investigation. Detective Chen called me. Ms. Martinez, or whoever you are, I need you to come in. We're investigating Eternal Rest Funeral Home and Richard Castellano. I went to the station. This time she listened. Really listened. We've obtained a warrant for his financial records. There are significant irregularities, transfers that don't make sense, accounts in names of deceased individuals. It's looking like you were telling the truth. What happens now? We build a case, but I need your help. I need you to tell me everything again, every detail, every document he touched, every interaction. I spent 4 hours at the police station that day, going through everything. Every piece of information Richard had access to. Every suspicious transaction. Every step of how he'd stolen my identity. The problem, Detective Chen said, is that he's covered his tracks well. The fraudulent death certificate was filed through proper channels. The transfers were authorized with correct passwords and security information. Legally, everything looks legitimate. But it's not legitimate. He forged everything. I know. But proving it in court will be difficult. We need concrete evidence that he was the one who did this, not just circumstantial patterns. What about the other victims? They help establish a pattern. But each case has the same problem, no direct evidence linking Richard to the fraud. Then Diana Wu called me. The woman I'd met outside the funeral home. I found something. What? I've been going through my father's old computer. Found emails from Richard, asking for my father's banking information, said he needed it for estate settlement purposes. My father sent it to him. That's it. That's the evidence. There's more. I found similar emails from other families. Richard had a template. He'd send it to elderly clients, gain their trust, get their information, and then drain their accounts after they died. We need to give this to the police. Already did. Detective Chen has everything. The investigation moved fast after that. Police executed search warrants on Richard's home and funeral business. Found exactly what they were looking for. In Richard's home office, a locked filing cabinet containing detailed files on dozens of clients. Not funeral information. Financial information, bank accounts, passwords, social security numbers, birth certificates, everything needed to steal someone's identity, including mine. My file was thick, contained copies of every document I'd given him for my mother's funeral, plus things I hadn't given him, credit reports, account statements, property records. He'd been researching me. Building a profile, planning to steal everything long before my mother's funeral was even over. They also found the evidence that destroyed him completely. A laptop with detailed records of his scheme, spreadsheets tracking victims, how much he'd stolen from each one, what accounts he'd accessed, email templates he used to trick people into giving him information, and most damning, drafts of fraudulent death certificates, including mine, dated 2 weeks before I died. He'd planned my death before it happened, had the paperwork ready to file the moment he decided to pull the trigger. Richard was arrested at the funeral home while conducting a service. Charged with identity theft, 43 counts, fraud, 67 counts, forgery, 34 counts, grand theft, 58 counts, filing false documents, 29 counts. The list went on and on. Decades of crimes, hundreds of victims, millions of dollars stolen. But my case was special. I was the only one he declared legally dead. Additional charges were added specifically for me. Conspiracy to commit murder, he'd planned to make my accident real. Falsifying a death certificate. Attempted identity theft with intent to assume identity permanently. The prosecutor told me, he wasn't just stealing from you, he was planning to become you, live as you. We found documents showing he was building a complete new identity using your credentials. The thought made me sick. He'd planned to erase me completely. The legal battle to restore my identity took 4 months. I had to petition the court to overturn my death certificate. Had to prove I was who I said I was. Even with Richard arrested and evidence abundant, the bureaucratic process was nightmare. You have to understand, my court-appointed lawyer explained, legally, you've been dead for months. Overturning that requires extraordinary proof and judicial approval. The system isn't designed for this. The system is what let this happen in the first place. I know. And that's going to change because of your case. But for now, we have to work within the system. I had to provide fingerprints, match to old records, DNA test, compared to my mother's remains, testimony from people who knew me, documentation of my entire life history, proof that I'd been alive during the time I was supposedly dead. It was exhausting, humiliating, having to prove I existed. But finally, the judge ruled. This court finds that the death certificate filed for Eve Martinez on March 16 was fraudulent and is hereby nullified. Ms. Martinez is declared legally alive. All rights, properties, and accounts are to be restored immediately. I cried in that courtroom, not from relief, but from rage, because it had taken 4 months to undo what Richard had done in a day. 4 months of being legally dead. 4 months of not existing. 4 months of fighting for my own life. Restoring my identity was only the beginning. My credit was destroyed. Took 2 years to fix. My bank accounts had been emptied. Some money was recovered from Richard's accounts, but most was gone. My mother's estate had been partially liquidated. The house sold to a third party who'd bought it in good faith. I had to sue to get compensation. My job had replaced me. I had to reapply and start over. My apartment had been rented to someone else. I had to find new housing. My entire life had to be rebuilt from scratch. But I did it. One piece at a time. Got my accounts restored. Got my credit fixed. Got a new apartment. Got my job back eventually. Started living again. Richard's trial was a media circus. I had to testify. Had to sit in that courtroom and face him. Had to relive everything he'd done to me. His lawyer tried to claim he had mental health issues. That he'd acted impulsively. That he deserved leniency. The prosecutor destroyed that defense. This was not impulsive. This was calculated, systematic, spanning decades. Mr. Castellano carefully selected vulnerable victims, gained their trust, stole their identities, and in Ms. Martinez's case, attempted to erase her existence entirely. This is not mental illness. This is sociopathy. Richard was convicted on 231 counts. Sentenced to 45 years in prison. He'll die there. and I don't feel bad about that. But the damage he caused can't be measured in years. 18 families lost their loved ones' estates. 43 people had their identities stolen. Countless others were victimized in smaller ways. And me? I lost 6 months of my life. 6 months of being dead. 6 months of not existing. 6 months I'll never get back. The funeral industry changed because of this case. New regulations passed, requiring background checks for funeral directors, limiting access to sensitive documents, creating oversight for death certificate filings, mandating reporting of suspicious activity. It's not enough, but it's something. I became an advocate, testifying before legislative committees, pushing for stronger identity theft protections, speaking at conferences about what happened to me, helping other victims navigate the system. Because I learned something important. The system is broken. It's too easy to steal someone's identity, too hard to prove you're alive when records say you're dead. Too many people who are supposed to help you don't believe you, and too many predators exploit those weaknesses. People ask me, how do you trust anyone now? And, honestly, I don't. Not fully. Not anymore. I'm careful about who I give information to, vigilant about monitoring my accounts, paranoid about identity theft. I probably always will be. But I'm alive. Really, truly alive. Not just legally, but in every way that matters. I survived something that should have destroyed me, came back from being dead, proved everyone wrong who didn't believe me, and exposed a predator who'd been hurting people for decades. That grave they buried me in? They exhumed it after Richard's arrest. The coffin was filled with sandbags, weighted to feel real when they carried it, but empty of any actual body, because I was never dead. I was just declared dead by someone who wanted me erased. Last week, I visited that grave. My grave. The headstone still stands because removing it requires additional paperwork I haven't bothered with yet. I stood there looking at my own name carved in stone. Eve Martinez. Born. Died. Except, I didn't die. I'm standing right here. And I want you to know something, baby. If you're listening to this and something feels wrong, if your identity feels compromised, if someone has access to your information, if you feel like you're being erased, fight back. Don't let anyone tell you you're crazy. Don't let the system make you doubt yourself. Keep fighting until someone listens. Because I was declared legally dead and I proved I was alive. If I can do that, you can fight whatever you're facing. My name is Eve Martinez. I'm 46 years old, and I'm alive. Final reflections. Your identity is precious. Protect it. Guard it. Don't give sensitive information to anyone unless absolutely necessary. The system is not designed to help victims. It's designed to process paperwork. You have to fight for yourself. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Even if everyone tells you you're paranoid. Predators hide in plain sight. In helping professions. In positions of trust. Be careful who you trust completely. Being declared dead is easier than proving you're alive. The burden of proof falls on you, not the system. Document everything. Keep records. Save emails. Maintain proof of your existence. When everyone tells you you're wrong, keep fighting anyway. Truth matters more than consensus. Recovery is possible even from complete identity theft. It's slow, painful, and difficult, but possible. Your existence matters. Your identity matters. You matter. Don't let anyone erase you.